Over the years, the Senior Bowl has gotten a lot of the pub when it comes to all-star game events during the pre-draft process, but the East-West Shrine Bowl is quickly catching up, and the Seahawks drafting several key players from that all-star showcase. We're going to be talking to the director of the East-West Shrine Bowl coming up here next here on Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s that are tuning in, whether you are in Bellevue, Washington, or Bellevue, Nebraska. We appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are fired up to continue our post-draft coverage today with East-West Shrine Bowl director Eric Galko. He will be joining us here to break down Seattle's draft picks and some undrafted signings that joined the team as well. Eric, we greatly appreciate having you on the show and really excited about the direction the East-West Shrine Bowl is going in recent years under your direction.
Shrine Bowl, Corbin, Shrine Bowl. I'll say it like 5 more times. We're on the same page here. No, man, I appreciate having me on. I'm excited about the Shrine Bowl and its growth the last 4 or 5 years, man. It's been fun to hopefully do good work and bring in more attention to what the Shriners Children's Hospital does nationwide, worldwide, really. That's one of the – people forget that sometimes. That's what the event's all about, too. But certainly having star players like Schneider Sanders, first-round picks like Zay Flowers and Kenneth Grant bring a lot of attention what the Shrine Bowl isn't all about, too, and we're pumped for the future.
Well, and I'll just jump in right off the bat, Eric. And thank you again, as Corbin just said, for joining us. And you mentioned it. It's all about the Shriners. It's all about the kids that you work with. I'm just going to ask you here for a moment to kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit. And I've been fortunate enough to go to a lot of the Shrine Bowl practices over the years. I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of the players and just the incredible impressions that they had from meeting some of the children, some of the Shriners themselves. Is there any particular moment, any particular player, any particular memory that stands out for you, whether it be a former Seahawk or any other player, just memories of meeting those kids, and just the perspective that provides?
Yeah, I mean, probably a couple small things. These guys playing Duck, Duck, Goose, or just seeing a patient and a player off to the side talking about like normal things, because these people forget sometimes that these patients are not just here for in awe, but they're just trying to live their life and work with players, and the players get as much out of it as the patients do. I think my favorite piece is every year I kind of give our players a survey of what they liked, what they didn't like about the event. And the most scathing review we ever got was a player who was so mad that Titus Leo who plays for the Colts, that he only got 2 hours with the patients. And he was so frustrated. He's like, there should be more time throughout the week as well, too, which is good feedback. And we took it. And I told Ty the same thing as well. Hey, I got your feedback. I figured this was you, and I appreciate you saying that. But I think one of the cool parts about that I've learned about the All-Star game process, really early on in the draft process, is that these guys have kind of shed their skin of college athletes, but they're not quite pros yet. And they're really in this cool area where if you're in the media, you could talk to these guys and it's a little bit unfiltered. They're genuine. They're not, NFL guys getting polished, but they're also not, young college kids either. And from an NFL standpoint, they're getting their first taste of what the NFL life's going to be like. And then, of course, at the event, they get a chance to see at the Shrine Bowl, especially a chance of like, hey, what their impact, what Schneider Sanders and the attention he brings can do for the Children's Hospital. These players all see that up close and personal throughout the week as well, too. So I always call it the All-Star game from the Shrine Bowl is kind of their doorway to the NFL. They're not college. They're not pro guys. They're not disenchanted of things outside their control yet, and they really enjoy the moment too. And certainly the Shrine Bowl gets the benefit from having the Brock Purdy's, the Schneider Sanders, everyone in between be a part of this event for over 100 years.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see that and the amount of impact that these players understand they're having and how much they value that. And it's really bigger than the game of football. And so that is the most exciting thing about your All-Star Showcase, the ability to really change the lives of these young children that obviously are dealing with a lot of things away from what football players are having to deal with on the field and preparing for the NFL draft. And so I just think it's an incredible event. As you know, Eric, the Seahawks drafted Bryce Cable in the first round out of North Dakota State, and his athleticism is one of his big calling cards. But interestingly enough, you can make an argument, at least based on athletic testing, that he was not the most athletic offensive lineman that the Seahawks drafted. And bringing in Bryce Cabeldue from Kansas, who participated in your game, being the player that 94th percentile athleticism according to relative athletic score, which is a little better than what Zabel's is. What really caught your attention with Bryce Cabeldue? Do you think he was the most athletic lineman that was in your game this year? And do you see potentially him having starter quality ability down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think testing-wise, he certainly was. I think he was one of the only guys we had in the 99th percentile, and we take a lot of pride in working with the colleges that we know and those sources that we have about kind of projecting what their athleticism is going to be. I always joke that NFL teams get a chance to know how athletic these guys are at the Combine and Pro Day. I got to invite these guys in October, November, right? So we got to kind of use some context clues and also use the school itself. But I will say his athletic testing didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise us as a staff. We knew how athletic it was from a testing standpoint. And I think he showed at the Shrine Bowl, played a lot of guard that week in practice, that hey, as a guard, lateral movement, upfield, working as a run blocker in space, being a zone blocker, he can do all those things athletically. And he's played a lot of football at Kansas, so know how to do it fundamentally and technically as well too. So I think he's, despite being a guy who's not a young developmental guy, he's got a lot of room to grow and get better. And the benefit for Cabeldue is that if he was in a man scheme or a zone scheme, he can develop in either one of those. If he's playing tackle or guard, he can develop all those spaces because he has that movement ability. So most athletic at the Shrine Bowl, I'm not sure about that. All these linemen are all my favorites. They're all tied for the most athletic in my mind or whatever. But I think testing-wise, he certainly showed it. And I think for the Seahawks, having a guy like him that's played tackle, has played guard, he's smart, maybe develop at center long term. But I think he could be a four-position backup early on, and who knows what the future holds for him.
Well, it's an interesting answer just because it does kind of speak to Cabledue's athletic ability, his versatility, and just, again, to the sources that you have had to create over the years, Eric. And so, one of the positions that I really want to talk to you, and you kind of name-dropped a couple of them there with Shedeur Sanders as well as Brock Purdy. Neither of those players, of course, played for the Seahawks. So I will mention a quarterback that played for the Seahawks that I remember scouting at the East-West, when it was called the East-West Shrine Bowl back in the old San Francisco days. And that would be Javaris Jackson. And so to me, I just want to kind of, first off, just kind of give you some credit. The fact that you and others previously with your game have been able to kind of identify some of these kind of under the radar quarterbacks. All of that said, under the radar is certainly not an expression that is often used with Shedeur Sanders. So now that he's with the Cleveland Browns, I mean, we all saw that he fell a little bit further, maybe a lot further than some of us anticipated. Can you just kind of, give us a peek behind the curtain a little bit? What was Shedeur Sanders like from your perspective as the director of player personnel at the Shrine Bowl?
Yeah, I talked to a lot of teams and people about Shedeur because I got a chance to know him while at Colorado. I've known Coach Prime and people there on that staff for a couple of years now. And obviously Shedeur, announced coming to Shrine Bowl in November, was there all week long as well. And I told people, hey, I'm just telling my stories. And I put a bunch of stories on social media. In my experience, mature, genuine is a word I would use, honest, unfiltered, which sometimes people didn't like and love. I think he very respectful and respected by teammates and people that know him well. And I think all of those are why that genuineness, that authenticity can sometimes have people be a little bit, what's this guy's deal? And I think sometimes we assume authenticity means disingenuous or I can't trust that guy. I think Shedeur is exactly who he says he is. He's been in the spotlight most of his life because of his dad. But seeing the small things, I told a story, I think, on social media. He asked me and people with our team, hey, I'm doing a press conference. Can I learn more about the hospital? Make sure I can speak eloquently about that. Didn't have to do that. No one asked him to do that. He's like, I have a voice, a platform. I'm going to do that. You ask any of our coaches or people like Jordan Palmer, who ran our throwing session, hey, I'm Shedeur Sanders. Nice to meet you. Shakes their hand, looks you in the eye too. I think if you meet Shedeur Sanders, you're going to like him and get to know him. I think for NFL teams, a lot of historical context of some guys that are really authentic can sometimes be disingenuous. And I think he's a rare breed of authentic, genuine, is himself, self-confident. And I think the fact that he fell to the fifth round of the draft is only going to make him more and more confident in himself, and he can prove people wrong as well too. And I think we've seen in Cleveland, I think the social media team in Cleveland has used him quite a bit, as you would want to for a guy like Shedeur Sanders, but he's been about the work. He's been offline. He's been doing what he has to do. He's been respectful. He's talked about publicly and privately about how much Joe Flacco was meaning to him as someone can watch him as well too. So I think the story's not done on Shedeur Sanders. I think he's in a much tougher situation than he would have been if he was a first-round pick, but I think Shedeur Sanders is going to play in the NFL for a long, long time. And I think once people kind of get past the celebrity of him, they'll really appreciate what a great person he is.
The NBA playoffs are in full swing. In fact, we've got the NBA Finals set to kick off shortly between the Pacers and the Thunder. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get into the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether I'm picking my favorite team in a matchup, go Pacers, or diving into player props for teams still remaining in the playoff hunt. Whether it's Tyrese Halliburton nailing clutch jumpers to stick the dagger in the Thunder, or Chet Holmgren throwing down thunderous dunks and saying that Oklahoma City is going to win the big thing, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com today and claim your $250 in bonus bets. Eric, I know that Jalen Milroe did not play in your game, but you mentioned Jordan Palmer and his involvement in the Shrine Bowl, and Palmer is Jalen Milroe's personal throwing instructor. He is his quarterback coach. So I know a lot of our listeners are going to have their ears perk up when they hear that name mentioned with the Shrine Bowl. What can you tell us about Jordan Palmer and the impact that he has coaching quarterbacks? Obviously, he had a brief stint in the NFL himself as a quarterback, but what can you say about how he coaches quarterbacks and what you anticipate he's going to be doing as far as working with Jalen Milroe? Because I know our listeners, they're immediately going to be like, wait, that's the guy Milroe said he was working with, and that's immediately going to drum up a lot of interest.
Well, yeah, I'll speak about not for Jordan, but on my team with Milroe, what a great person. Really one of the best interviews and people I've talked to the entire draft process. Met him and talked to him probably 15, 20, 30 minutes at Manning Passing Academy a year ago. Big smile, great personality, very respectful, engaged, wants to get better. I think you'll hear that a lot of Milroe is that he really wants to be great. He really wants to get better. It sounds cheesy, and a lot of guys go through the motions or start doing some of those things. I think Jalen really wants to be that. I got that impression right away in talking to him as well, too. He's going to be someone people like, but also someone players and teammates really respect because I'm not sure what he's like in Seattle. I have no doubt he's been a first in, last out kind of guy in Seattle. That's the kind of person Jalen Milroe is. And really the only questions on Milroe is take the next step as a pocket navigator, play progression, work outside that Bama offense, the NFL offense. I think he has the mental ability to do it. Just that next step. We've seen guys from college that are smart enough and talented enough and all that stuff don't make that transition. Some they do, some they don't. We'll see if he does. I think for Jordan, one thing that I've learned from Jordan and seen from a distance is how he's really helped quarterbacks get better incrementally, right? And I think, again, I don't want to speak for Jordan, but I think a lot of the best QB coaches in the NFL or privately know that there's no one fix. There's no one system to throw a football. There's no one system to develop as a passer. I know with Josh Allen and Jordan, he's told a story, I think publicly as well too, that, hey, the first year with Josh, it was going to fix 2 things. We got to fix 6 things. We're going to fix 2 things this year, right? And kind of incrementally build and helping their quarterbacks really understand. Jordan does a great job of explaining how the body moves, if this, then this, why every movement matters. And I think that's what Jalen has made huge strides in from his time in Alabama through the draft process. I bet now in Seattle, the efficiency of movement, knowing why things are meant what they are too. Jordan is a deep thinker. I've been in those rooms with Jordan as QBs. It's a lot of science and physiological talk. And sometimes it can be a little bit dry, but if you're locked in, you want to get better, you're going to learn how your body moves to maximize. I think for Jalen, all the talent in the world, it's about being efficient as a thrower. I think Jordan's a great fit for Jalen from a personality standpoint and what he teaches standpoint. And I think Jalen's going to make huge strides this year. I think Seattle's a great spot because he doesn't have to play at all this year. He can play situationally, 1 or 2 snaps here or there. Oh, by the way, Sam Darnold works with Jordan Palmer as well, so they have some overlap there for sure. And I think it's going to be a nice transition for Jalen to have a 1, 2, 3 year buildup, similar to Josh Allen in Buffalo with maybe less pressure. I think by year 3, we could see Jalen Milroe as a really special quarterback in the NFL.
Eric, I'm just blown away by your perspective that you just provided here with a player that, of course, wasn't playing your game. And there wasn't a lot. The Seahawks selected 11 players this year in the draft. And, of course, they have a number of undrafted free agents as well. Is there anybody that Seattle selected or among their undrafted free agents that also just kind of jumps out at you as far as being maybe a really good fit in Mike Macdonald's system, or that you were just very, very high on and think that they are going to be a very solid contributor, maybe even a superstar at the NFL level?
I wouldn't say superstar is the immediately word that comes out, but I think Ricky White's going to play a long, long time in the NFL. He 5 block punts this year, as well as being the team's feature receiver and really their identity on offense. I think like the interviews he did or what happened after the quarterback transfer issue early on at UNLV, and Ricky became kind of the face and the voice of the team that was really in the news for the wrong reasons. I think the leadership, the confidence that he has, the special teams ability to lead. They took Tariq Young a couple of years ago. He was that special teams guy. I think Ricky's a different version, a very different version of in terms of play style, but similar type of immediate special teams ad and can play a long time in the NFL. And the Seahawks have had a lot of success with Tariq Young, Jake Bobo, and now Ricky White, of guys from the Shrine Bowl that were late round or PFAs and up sticking for a long, long time in the NFL. So I think Ricky White's going to play 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And we know you play 2, 3 years in the NFL at receiver, forget special teams, you're going to play a lot more on offense as well. We've seen a lot of guys start off as special teams aces and then becoming feature receivers in the NFL. So he's the one that jumps out of guys I know they drafted that I said, hey, this guy is going to play in the NFL for a long time. It's up to Ricky and the team how much he plays at receiver. But he's a guy you're going to be happy to have in your locker room.
And the Seahawks had a couple of undrafted signings that came from your game, that played in your game in the cornerback room. And the one that I was actually the most surprised about, Isas Waxter was a player that I started to watch, somehow got my hands on some All-22 for Villanova, which might have been the hardest thing I've ever had to do, getting my hands on All-22 film. But Waxter's size at 6'2", roughly 210 pounds, and you can see it on the practice field, that he doesn't necessarily even look like a corner. It looks more like a safety. But you also have Zy Alexander from LSU, who had some really good ball production numbers, didn't test quite as well as I'm sure he wanted to, and he ended up going undrafted. Both guys that I had draftable grades on. How do you see those two players fit in the NFL and in Mike Macdonald's system, being corners that have decent size, decent length, and there's some ball productivity, especially from Alexander in this scheme?
Yeah, I think they're different kind of great PFAs. I thought both had a good chance to be drafted as well, too. Zy being the guy that's played a lot of football at a really high level. He's faced every great corner in the SEC for the last 2-3 years. He's been in DB rooms with first-round picks and high draft picks his whole career. So that's something to be said, that he's had probably the most competitive practices of any cornerback in the country coming out of college, with how good that LSU DB and receiver room has been the last 3 years. I think he's a guy that can certainly make plays in practice and earn a spot in the roster because he's big enough to play special teams, but can certainly hang. And don't be surprised at all if he ends up contributing and competing for real minutes and even rotational minutes as a corner. And then Isas Waxter, kind of the Tariq Woolen type of physical freak and really impressive. I think we really appreciate Isas Waxter as a junior. I think they played Maryland early in his junior season. Maybe it was his senior season as well. And just, again, Maryland receiver room was deep. They had 3-4 guys that are in the NFL now. And I think the competitiveness that he had as a corner, we only had about 5, 6, 7 snaps and reps against their top guys because obviously Maryland's smart to stay away from him. I think he had an interception in that game. I think Isas Waxter, when the game's, and it's a tough situation, the game's on the line, he can really make a play in there vertically, as well as obviously be a great press player as well, too. I think he can play some safety, maybe some box safety as well, because he can be really physical in the short area. But I think both those guys, big enough to play special teams, that's really important when you're a PFA to win the job on special teams for sure. I think both those guys have kind of inklings of what either Mike Macdonald or past Seahawks corners that have had success in the NFL have in their arsenal.
Eric, I know we have limited time here, and I just want to, first off, just thank you again for joining us. We're getting to the time of the year, and it's, of course, early summer, where I'm getting, excited about, Phil Steele magazine coming in, or NFLDraftScout.com, or previously OptimScouting.com, just to kind of get a feel for who are the prospects that I need to be kind of keeping an eye on, both in terms of the NFL media and from the CFL perspective. When is the Shrine Bowl's top 1,000 list going to come out? Because I'm eagerly looking forward to that. Can you just kind of give us a little bit of perspective? Again, a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, What are you and your scouts doing to kind of create that top 1,000 list?
Yeah, it's funny. When we first had the idea, I think it was my second year, it was a little bit tongue in cheek, 1,000 players, right? I'm like, there's not too many guys and whatever else. And a different all-star game had a watch list of like 700 guys. I'm like, all right, let's just do 1,000. But two things ended up happening. One, we kind of realized that, hey, the two NFL scouting services, NFS and Blesto, they grade about 1,000-ish players, right? So it's not crazy with 1,000 guys. And now the D2 and D3 level as well, too. There's a lot of guys to watch and consider. But really, doing it the first year and every year after that, 1,001, 1,002 is tough to leave off. I mean, there's a lot of guys that obviously all those guys don't make it to the NFL, but the fact that guys can go back to school or transfer again, like there's a huge class. And obviously all-star games can invite underclass now too. So now juniors and redshirt sophomores are included. There's 1,000 good players in college every year now that are over upperclassmen, not counting freshmen and sophomores. So it's a grind. Our staff started on this year's 2026 draft class in December of last year. So we've been going at it. We usually have about a 9-month cycle in terms of preparing for the Shrine Bowl 1000 in our season as well too. And we've got about almost 3,000 reports in our database currently. So our staff is working overdrive to get that done and really whittle these guys down. But despite it being 1,000 players, it's really freaking hard to narrow that list down as well too. And what the hope is, we'll release it again in mid to late July, is, I don't like anyone to feel like they're the expert, right? I don't have someone say, I have the answer. My big board's the best. But hey, these are the 1,000 guys that we're watching. And if you're a scout and you say, hey, I want to be a scout in the NFL one day, I always tell guys, watch a conference, watch a position, keep your filter small and crush it there. And if we can help with that and say, hey, these are 1,000 guys that we're looking at. If you want to watch just the small school guys, or just the Power 5 guys, just the G5 guys, use our list, filter it down. Tell us who we missed. Tell us like, oh my God, so thankful I found that guy as well too. So we do hope it serves as kind of a baseline, just like the NFL has NFS and Blesto. We hope that the Tribe 1000 be that for people in the media trying to just make the most of their time and be really efficient and watching the right guys.
Eric, we've had an absolute blast learning more about the Shrine Bowl, your guys' scouting process. Before we let you go, building off of that last response here, everybody knows about the transfer portal and just how much that has changed college sports, not just football, but it has changed college sports, the complexion of it. I guess my question for you here, do you think that even with the transfer portal, do you think that the gap has closed between the FBS schools and not just the FCS schools, but also Division II, Division III, even NIA schools? It just feels to me like we are seeing a lot more players, even with the transfer portal. You'd think all those guys would be jumping up, but it's not the case. A lot of those guys are being found by scouting agencies now. Do you feel like that gap has closed between those divisions?
I'm not sure yet. I do hope it happens. And I think we've seen some players have success. And, a lot of guys think the grass is always greener. And sometimes being where you're at and being stable, we forget that these guys, they're guys, they're adults, but they're still kids in college. Imagine you were a sophomore in college and you transferred schools and had to have all new friends and new classes. And it's a lot to do that at that age, especially when you don't have an agent every day, maybe even an NIL agent, someone there every day or whoever, and you're still developing as a person. It's not easy to transfer. I do hope a lot more guys consider staying where they're at, as well as, hey, sometimes being a big fish in a small pond can really help you with NFL teams. The best player at North Dakota State is going to be drafted. You want to be the 6th offensive tackle at an SEC school or the best guy at North Dakota State. I think they've proven that they can really do that. So I think for a lot of guys, hopefully they realize that there's a lot more strategy behind where you want to go. If your goal is the NFL, to be at the school you're at or transfer down versus transfer up, whatever the idea is as well too. So I think right now there's still a lot of rush with the money to go to Power 5 schools. And I get that for players for sure too. And again, I'm a huge player empowerment, player activist. I think players moving around right now is great. I think if there's rules they get in place, they need to ask players, and hopefully a player agency or association starts up that these guys can have representation in that discussion as well too, because players should be able to move freely unless there's rules that also benefit them. But I think right now, one of the real benefits I've told people that I've seen in the last 3-4 years, these guys are so freaking mature and prepared when they get to the NFL cycle. No more are there very few players I talk to are not at least a little bit media trained, don't have an idea what business is. Like they all have their own LLCs. Like they're so much more sophisticated that, I've told teams that have asked me, I'm like, hey, you guys shouldn't miss nearly as often. Like you're getting adults now. Before you were getting a 20-year-old kid who was at a school because his uncle told him to go there and he was trapped at that school for 3-4 years. Then he's in the NFL draft. No more. Cam Ward went from Washington State and he did a prep year at Miami. And he had a lot of great people around him, got a lot of great advice. He and his dad, Calvin, and mom, Patrice, like they took a lot of great insight and advice, and they had a prep year for the NFL. A lot of guys have that now too. So I think the portal, NIL, has made a lot of these young athletes and young people become young men in college, and that's made their NFL career more successful too. I just hope guys keep in mind the fact that, hey, being a big fish in a small pond, being where you're going to be at your best can really help these guys for sure too. But we're still the, early phase one of probably a 5-phase transition of what college sports will be in the next couple of years too. So I tell people keep that in mind. We're going to see a lot of changes here the next 5-10 years.
Really interesting insight. A lot of the guys that are transferring, all the circumstances are different, but it does seem like NFL teams are valuing the guys that gut it out and stay with their schools rather than the ones that just jump ship, especially the ones multiple times. I'm really fascinated to see how this is going to look here in the next 3-4 years as this continues to evolve with all these changes going on in college sports and college football. Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure, and best of luck to you here the next several months as you try to whittle down your prospects down to that top 1,000.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on, guys. We'll talk soon. All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.